All right, here we are, people of Riot. Liam here for the BTC Challenge, day number 2. And so I'm going to share some thoughts from what I've been reading recently. I've been reading the book of Daniel, and Daniel 6 struck me, and I'm going to kind of share some of the thoughts, and we're going to just look at this passage, and I'm going to just tell you what I think this kind of has to say about God and what it has to say about us and how this might apply to our lives even right now. So if you're unfamiliar with the story here, basically, Daniel is a Jewish man from Israel, and Babylonians have come in and they've invaded Israel, and he is in exile in Babylon. And this is some years after that, and he was put in schooling to be an administrator. And in earlier chapters, it talks about how Daniel is really good at his job, and previous kings before Darius have given him raises, and he's kind of grown quite a bit of a reputation in the kingdom. And at this point, he is one of the top 3 administrators over the entire kingdom. And so basically, his other companions, the other rulers, are kind of afraid that Daniel's going to be put above them, which Darius was planning on putting him at number 2. So basically, they're like, all right, we need to get rid of this guy. So they basically study him, and they kind of look at his government affairs, and they kind of see here in verse 4, it says, but they had no grounds to charge him on because he was trustworthy, and they were unable to find anything wrong with him. And so in verse 5, though, it says, finally, these men said, we will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God. So basically, they're like, this dude's really good with what he does, and so we're like, we gotta kind of trap him in to do something with, with the God that he worships. So basically, they come up with this awesome scheme to, they go to the king, and they're like, hey, like for the next 30 days, you should put in a law that everyone has to worship you as God, and they can't worship any other gods. And if they do, then you'll throw them into the lion's den. And King Darius here is like, yeah, sure, sounds good. But Daniel here, he follows the God of Israel, the God of the Bible. And, it says in verse 10, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where he opened the window towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to God, just as he had done before. So Daniel pays no attention to this. He continues praying to God, just as he has done before, 3 times a day. It says he's thanking God, which is real cool. So these guys find that Daniel did that. They go to the king, and they're like, your dude Daniel here, he's still praying, and you put this law in. And the king's like, oh, crap. And so it says, when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. But couldn't really figure anything out. And so it says that he couldn't sleep all night, and they put him in the den. And, Darius was in great distress because he really liked Daniel. And it says at first light, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den, and he called out to Daniel, and Daniel answered. He said, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he has shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, Your Majesty. And the king's response was that he, was super happy that Daniel was around, and he wrote this decree. He says, the king Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth, and he rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So we see here, basically Daniel, stays faithful to God, and God rescues him. And, some of the things that I think are kind of important here, if we look at, like, what does this kind of say about God, is that, God values a hard work. God values, hardworking people, and not just like, he values his people's work in things that don't necessarily pertain to him. So, Daniel was a good worker, and he was a good administrator. And that rewarded him, a kind of a voice with the king, to where the king was distressed when Daniel went against us. It also kind of shows that God values people who are faithful to him. Daniel was there every day praying to God 3 times a day, giving thanks to him, even in this kind of not so exciting circumstance he was in. He was in exile. But he continued to pray, and God valued that, and God delivered him. And I think kind of the big takeaway here is, with our situation right now, is like a lot of us are at home all the time with our brothers and sisters and our family, and some of them might not know God. And I'm thinking here, like kind of like Daniel, is he was diligent in his work. That might be like homework or a job that we might have, and other people like the king, saw that and was like, I respect this person. And I think that doing stuff like that kind of will gain us respect with people, people that know God and people that don't know God. And it shows that he continued to pray. And I think that that is super important for us right now, is that we should be continuing to talk to God and thank God, and read our word and hear from him. And I think that the result of this scenario is that King Darius came to some sort of belief in God. And that wouldn't have happened if Daniel wasn't a hard worker or wasn't an actual follower of Christ. And so I think that we should be, during this time, good witnesses to our family, so that we might have an audience with them to share our faith with them. And so that's kind of what I think, what I kind of took away from this passage. And I don't know, thought it was pretty cool. And I will be nominating next Israel Bara and Peter Jeter. So you guys have 2 days. Boom, BTC.